Hey guys, this is Jeff Stanek with Figure It Out Baseball. We've got a kind of a unique, sort of a one-of-a-kind podcast today, something that we have not done before, but something I'm interested in, I'm very excited about. And I spoke to the gentleman who's joining us today another time just to kind of talk about his company and his product. And I thought it was worth recording a podcast because I think that his company does things differently, and I think that the way that they do things is worth talking about in a podcast setting, and to let all the baseball people, baseball parents, baseball coaches, baseball players that follow this podcast, I think this is something that you certainly want to hear. In this podcast, we're being joined by Enrique Celedon. He is the Senior Director of Global Sales for True Temper Baseball. Now, if that brand sounds familiar a little bit, it's if you haven't heard of the baseball side, which is relatively new, you have probably heard of the golf side of True Temper, and we'll get into all that in this podcast. But True Temper Baseball is, again, it's fairly recent. It's a fairly recent division of True Temper that has been started, and Enrique is an integral part of that, and True Diamond Science is a part of True Temper Baseball, which we're going to talk about. The scientific part of what True Temper does with baseball is the part that I find particularly interesting, and I thought that was kind of the biggest reason I thought we should have this podcast. So, Enrique, before we jump into things, I just want to thank you for taking the time to be on this podcast with us.
Jeff, thanks so much. And by the way, you have a great podcast voice. I never noticed till right now. But thanks so much for having me, man. I always love talking to, industry vets and people that just get the game and play the game. We're trying to do something super different, coming from it from a very different point of view. So excited to share with your audience. So,
first of all, thank you for the compliment. I guess I've got maybe a little bit of a different voice once the podcast starts than before, but try to keep it as professional as possible around here. So I'm going to ask you, Enrique, first, your background and what made you transition or switch over to True Temper. Like when they first, you told me the story last time that we spoke about how they first kind of contacted you, and I'd like for you to maybe just sort of roll through that and your background and just what you bring, the experience and the knowledge that you bring to True Temper.
Sure. So I'm currently the Senior Director of Global Sales for the True Temper Baseball Division. I've been in baseball on the buying side and selling side for now almost a decade. I started my career at Sports Authority as kind of an assistant buyer in baseball. That was my first introduction to the sport from a commercial business standpoint. And from there, I went to EvoShield. Before Wilson owned them, like OG EvoShield, the startup, Rocket Fuel, it was a rocket ship. As we grew in MLB. I was part of that sales team. From there, I went to Nike. I learned a lot from a branding perspective there. I spent a year there. Nike is Nike. The swoosh is the king in branding, so I learned a lot there in product. And then from there, Easton called me, and I spent 3 or 4 years over at Easton. I've been part of the Mako launch. I've been part of the Ghost Fast Pitch launch. Obviously Easton's having a little downside right now on bats, but I'll say today their R&D department is one of the best out there, and I got to learn a lot from them. And then, interestingly enough, when I was hired at Easton, the president of Easton had left Easton and decided to start this sort of startup here at True Temper. And he said, one day he kind of called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, I'm starting this basically startup. Would you like to come run sales for me?" And I remember laughing, like, dude, the last thing we need is another bat brand. It's hard enough to sell Easton. It's hard enough to sell Wilson. It's super competitive. It's very established players. Marucci is probably the last person to kind of break through, and they're doing well. But that was almost 7 years in the making.
They also had Pujols and some other big names buying in there.
Yeah, they had Wood, and they had that whole player buying thing. So I remember he left, but then he flew me out, and I had actually never heard of True Temper Golf. So he flew me out to San Diego, where we have sort of our world R&D facility, where all the golf shafts and hockey and lacrosse sticks are all made. But he flew me out, and he kind of showed me the vision. We still didn't really have bats at that point, but I instantly saw that the current system of buying, I knew this from Easton, buying bats is complicated. It's difficult. There's certifications. There's all these rules. You outgrow your bat. It's just, for the amount of money you're spending on a bat, it's a really broken and outdated process. And he showed me this vision we had, and so I basically jumped on board immediately. I left Easton, came here, and since then we've sort of been building this thing from scratch. And the promise at True Temper at its very core is to make sure the players have the best and right bat in their hands, even if it's not a true bat. Like, if a DeMarini is the best brand for you as a player and your swing profile and the end weight are balanced, we want you to be in that bat, but we want to make the process transparent. And that's why we came and built all these things. And I'm proud to say now that we have a system that isn't biased towards true. It really gives a player more transparency in the process, and we do achieve a performance advantage when you fit a kid or dial in a kid to their specific fit.
When we first discussed this, it was really the first time that I heard about any sort of scientific process, for lack of a better term, or analytic process of choosing a bat. I mean, typically if you have a conversation, and I've had this conversation with people, and in fact for this website, Enrique, I've asked owners of wood bat companies, like, would you shoot a video helping kids to know how to choose a bat? Because how the heck do you do it? I don't know. Like, the old thing was like, if you can hold the bat, with your arm straight down to your side and holding the handle of the bat, you hold the bat out to your side with like the barrel as far away from you as it can get. And if you can hold that bat up for 10 seconds, then that bat is the right weight for you. It's not too heavy. Like, that was literally, I don't know if you've heard of that, but that was something I heard as a kid. And then now you go to a sporting goods store and you see a chart on the wall that says like height and weight, and like this is like the right the right length for you, the right weight for you. And obviously each league has its own specifications on what you need. But I don't know that I've never heard anybody that actually had any sort of a process. It's been like what I just mentioned, or like, hey man, it's just about feel. Like, pick up a couple bats and take some swings with them, and whatever feels right, whatever feels the best, that's the right bat for you. And I don't know there was ever a better answer than that, but now you guys have developed a better answer, and that is so intriguing to me. And I'd love for you to kind of tell people, if you can, or the best that you can, or the best that you're willing to, without having someone on, like, physically with you in a demo. But what is the process that True takes to help kids to find the right fit for a bat?
No, absolutely, and that we jokingly internally call that the wiggle test. You're going to spend $300 to $500 on wiggling a bat at a store and hoping it's the best, or you're buying it because the 4-hole hitter hits it and he hit a home run, and everybody needs to go get that bat. The unique thing of why True Temper Baseball works is we have 100 years of experience on the golf side. So if you think of golf, golf was baseball 10, 15 years ago. Launch monitors came into the scene for golf about 10 to 15 years ago, and they were actually rejected from the get-go. Like, that's junk. The PGA pros were like, hey, the only way to really train somebody is in person and with this. And slowly they became, now, if you're an elite golfer, you don't walk into a store, wiggle a driver, and buy it. You get fit for a driver. You get optimized for a driver. You dial in to your specific swing, your shaft, your stiffness on your shaft, the type of head you use, the type of grip. Everything's dialed into the player. So golf is so sophisticated. So the idea was always, hey, golf's got it figured out. No need to reinvent the wheel. Let's use all of the knowledge of golf fittings, but now take those and apply them to baseball. And what we've done now is we created actually a patent-pending algorithm where a player can attend a fitting, and it's about a 20 to 30-minute consultation at certain sites around the U.S. We have about 20 of them. You can find those on our website or reach out to us, and we can direct you in the right place. But basically, a player would walk in with their current bat. They would sign up for a time slot, and they would get measured. We get your height, your weight, but we also get your wingspan. We actually measure your strength, because the thing about the wiggle test, that's a static motion. You can hold a bat out straight up. That's one thing. Trying to swing a bat and adjust mid-swing to hit a curveball, that's a totally different metric to figure out what's right. So all of our fits are done with either soft toss or live pitching, because you have to be able to adapt the bat. Because a heavy bat, you can hit a heavy bat off a tee all day. But once you have to adjust that barrel, that's when you start noticing a bat that's too heavy. A lot of times, a too heavy bat equals a lot of pop flies because it's heavy, so it drags gravity and it ends up going under the ball. But what ends up happening is you come in, we measure you, then we actually measure your bat. So, your listeners probably know this already, but most bats don't actually weigh what they say they weigh. So if you take a bat that's a 30-inch drop 10, it should weigh 20 ounces. And this is for every brand, even ours. There's always going to be a manufacturer variance. And that variance could be 0.3 ounces. It could be 3 ounces. But bats are labeled they say a number, but it means nothing because that number most of the time isn't even real. So we measure your bat, so we know kind of what you're swinging. And a lot of times people that thought they were swinging a drop 10 are actually swinging a drop 8. Then the out where we differ from golf is in golf you usually just compare different clubs. With ours, you would hit your bat, and the algorithm will take all the information you gave it and prescribe the perfect true bat down to the half inch, the grip size, everything. We offer half inches in all our bats, so you can dial in your fit. We have different grip sizes for different hand sizes because we've noticed that makes a difference when holding the bat. So you put that all together, and you essentially come in with your bat. We'll fit you into the perfect true bat. You hit both of them, and then we show you the data at the end. And sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. Actually, 75% of the time we win. We're able to give you a better prescription or better performance, whether it's exit velocity, carry, bat speed. We can improve all those metrics, and we just show you the data. And then it's you seeing the results and making an informed buying decision. Sometimes a player's like, hey, these are about the same. I'll hold on to my bat. No need to buy a new one. Or, hey, this true one is giving me X, Y, and Z that I was looking for. So that's really how we revolutionize on the algorithm side. But not everybody's got 30, 20 minutes. We also have an online fitting tool on our website where people can go in and get fit online. It still gives you a prescription. And at the end of the day, the only way to really find the right bat is by hitting it. Not by hitting it with softballs, not by hitting it off a tee, somewhere in a cage. It's getting a bat and using it in-game, in practice, or in your regular training regimen. So that's what we offer, a demo program. You can demo any of our bats for 2 weeks. You can get 2 bats for 14 days for $30. We'll ship them to your house. That $30 covers the freight to you and back to us. So it's all included. And then at the end of the demo fee, as long as you send the bats back, we give you the $30 back towards the website as a credit. You can apply it towards the bat purchase, or you can just buy something else on the website. And our demo conversion rate right now, once people swing a true bat, it's about 80 to 90% of those people actually convert to a sale after they demoed our bats. So once they try it and they find the perfect fit, our bats have been the preferred way to go after a demo.
All of that stuff, it blows my mind. And it's been a long time since I've bought myself a metal bat. It's been several years since I've been in college when you have bat deals and kind of whoever the school's sponsored by, like that's a lot of times that's what bat you're getting, at least at higher levels. But what you're saying just seems so unique to me in the bat world. The fact that, first of all, you're actually measuring things. So I can take my bat, I can take the bat I'm thinking about buying, and I can take one of your bats and I can swing and I can look at measurables right there and say, okay, which one's producing, the results, which one's producing better results, and whichever one is the best, that's what you're going to walk away with. It doesn't, you're not, to me, that's the best way to sell your product is to say, hey man, try it against what you got right now and see, let's objectively look to see which one's better. That's incredible to me. And the, just all the other things that you're collecting, the data you're collecting. Now, I am interested to talk about just, how often you said the conversion rate is excellent. Once people actually swing a true bat, their conversion rate is excellent as far as just them holding on to it. But I do want to talk to you about the online fitting tool as well. Let's talk about that first, Enrique. What's the online fitting tool? How do people get it? What does that look like?
So we call it the True Fit, is the in-person full algorithm hit into a launch monitor like a Rapsodo or a Hit Track. That's the premium full version. But we obviously know, if you live, somewhere in the country that's just, sort of secluded, or you just don't have access to one of our facilities, the whole key is to make True available to everybody. So we have actually an online fit tool where we still use the same engine, the same algorithm we use for the in-person one. But a lot of the questions turn into more of, or a lot of the metrics that we use in person, where we get your height and weight and wingspan and strength, they become a little more subjective when you do it through the online fit. But we're still asking for the same information. We found ways to determine strength based on, for example, we'll use your BMI. So just because you're short and chubby, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're strong. So we use some CDC recommendations on the back end to see how strong you are for your BMI. And then all that, again, gets applied in the algorithm back end. You can go on the website right now. It's the online fitting tool. And literally you answer your questions. And at the end, you're going to get prescribed the perfect bat for you. And then we'll also give you 2 additional options if you're looking for maybe more distance or more speed specifically. So the algorithm works just the same, and all the bats, whether you buy them through the premium fit or you buy them through the online fit, or if you just buy them at a retailer or through the website without doing anything, all of our bats come with a 120 fit guarantee. It's one of the biggest things, and I'm sure you as a dad or as a coach, you've seen a player outgrow a bat. There's nothing more frustrating than buying a bat and 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, 2 months later, Johnny has a growth spurt or started doing push-ups and gets stronger, and all of a sudden the bat is either too long, too short, too heavy, too light. With our 120 fit guarantee, from the day you purchase it, you can exchange your bat for any other true model, any other length, for the first 120 days. So you literally cannot outgrow a true bat for the first 120 days you have it.
That's incredible. I've never heard of anything like that. I've heard of bats, if the bat breaks, you can send it back, but I've never heard of anything like that, which is, like, to me, all these things that you're doing, that you're offering, it's like, as a parent or as a player, like, why would you not give this a shot? I mean, I think it seems like worst case scenario, you're going to prove to yourself that your bat is better. And we're not doing this podcast, Enrique, as much as I know that you want to promote True Bat, like, I didn't want this podcast just to promote the heck out of True Temper Baseball, but I just think that the process that you guys go through, like, that's what was most intriguing to me. That's why I wanted to have this podcast. But I'm sitting here, like, I've got my boy's 4 years old, but if he was 8 years old or 12 years old, like, I can't, it's hard for me to, as a baseball guy, to sit here and say, like, I wouldn't try that. Like, I would try what you guys are doing, just because you're guaranteeing it's going to work. You're guaranteeing that you're guaranteeing that you're going to help me figure out what's the best bat for my kid. Whereas to this point, like, I don't know what the best thing to do is. And how would you know? Like, me as a player, look back to my own career, I have no idea if I was swinging the best bat for myself or not. And also, I had no idea until you and I spoke last time that a bat that was a 33-30, 33 inches, 30 ounces, I didn't know that weight could vary. I thought it was a 30-ounce bat, and that's a pretty big deal to someone. Like, I'm not a very big guy. I wasn't a very big guy when I played. Like, I needed that bat to be -3, or that was a big deal for me. And I want to ask you about that. I don't know if you'll know this or not, but is the variance in weight, like, if you take one model of bat from any brand, is that one model, like, is every bat in that model going to be the same? Or is even, like, within that model, like, one bat to the next bat might be different?
So it's all over the board. And to be fair, all brands are getting better at it. The biggest issue was when youth bats moved for the USA bat standard for the little leagues and ponies of the world. When those first bats came out, they were really hard to pass. And the way you pass a bat, usually, just rule of thumb, is by thickening the walls or making it heavier. You essentially add weight. If you add weights to the spot of the bat where it gets tested, you're more likely to pass. So what happens is you would pass one size, but then the next size would fail, so you would have to kind of mess with it. So it'd be weird to launch a bat that the 27-inch is a drop 10, but the 29 and 30 are drop 8s. So when you started building these bats, and there's always going to be manufacturing tolerances, right? When you're building composites, composite bats are still literally handmade. You're given a recipe to the factory, and they basically bake the bats as they go. It's really hard to kind of machine produce a composite bat. That's really hard to do. Aluminum bats, you use chop metal, chop the metal. But even our bats, we can never be on the dot, but there's always going to be variances. And then you actually weigh a bat before the grip, and a grip's usually 0.5, 0.6, 0.7 ounces. So all those weights and drops you see are actually before the grip. So that's a really long answer to tell you. That's why you should just weigh your bat. There should be scales at every store that just lets you know. Because the problem is, coaches will tell a U10 kid, you're a 30 drop 10. Like, as a generic, like, you guys are all this. And a Marucci 30 drop 10 and a Rawlings 30 drop 10, depending on the model and how, the price of the bat, that could vary drastically. So Johnny all of a sudden was a 30 drop 10, and he was doing fine, and then he switches brands and goes to another 30 drop 10, and he can't get to the ball anymore. Maybe it's because that's more of an end-loaded bat, or it's a heavier bat in general. So again, being off spec doesn't make a bad bat. It's only bad if you don't know that it's off spec. So it's all about transparency at the end of the day, and that's what we're trying to do.
And that's exactly it. It's not like, you don't blame a bat company for that, or like, and in some cases, I think in every case, really, like a different kind of bat, every kind of bat is probably right for somebody, if that makes sense. So like for me, again, as a smaller guy, like a bat control type of guy, like I wanted that. I really wanted to have a bat, or I probably needed to have a bat that was the weight that it says it was. But for a bigger, stronger guy, like he might not mind if a bat that's supposed to be a drop 10 is actually a drop 8. Like that's probably going to be an advantage for some people. I just think that it's something that people want to know. It's not a fault of anybody, or like you said, it's an imperfect process, and I get that. But how that isn't more transparent, I don't know. And especially with wood bats, I think with wood bats, a good wood manufacturer, to me, the better wood manufacturers out there, and especially like for big leaguers, like they're getting bats that are extremely specific. Like, this bat might be 34 inches and 31.3 ounces. And the player at that point, like he knows exactly what he's getting. But you go buy a generic bat, even a generic wood bat from the store, and the same thing that you're going to see, like you're either not going to see a weight at all, or it's going to promote it's a drop 3 or whatever, but it's just that can't be accurate all the time with wood bats. Wood there's too much of a variable there, but I don't know, something that's really, I think, is interesting, and I think it's like, so part of the reason I wanted to have this podcast is just to inform people about this sort of thing.
Yeah, well, real quick to that point, we did a study last postseason, so not this most current postseason, the one before, and we found that 65% of pro players swing a non-hole size bat. So either a half-inch length or a quarter-inch length, or just something that's not a 32, 33, 34. 65, that's an insane amount that the pros are dialing in at the highest level. Why are we forcing kids to jump a whole inch in every bat model? That's why we do half sizes. Because going from a 30 to a 31, that's a whole ounce you have to go up. That's a lot of weight for a development player. If you can go up half an inch or half an ounce, that lets you really gradually modify your swing as you're adding more weight. Because ultimately, you have to get from a 10 or a drop 12 to a drop 3 or a drop 5 before you get to high school, right? Ultimately, you're going to have to swing a drop 3 in high school. So the goal is you need to start making your bat heavier during your youth kind of journey to make sure you're ready to handle that drop 3 when it's time. And by being able to go up every half inch, I'm hoping all brands catch on and start doing this, because this is the right thing to do for the player in the game at the end of the day.
You're a part of the process of actually, measuring results. How much of a difference does an ounce truly make? Because obviously, just to the layperson, an ounce is like nothing. But to when you're talking about like major leaguers that swing, probably the heaviest bat that a major leaguer swings is probably in the mid 30s, 36, 37. I don't know if any guys swing anything heavier than that. I know back in the day they did, but now with guys going 100 miles an hour, like most major leaguers are probably swinging, bats that are 33 to 36 ounces, somewhere in that ballpark. So you're talking between a high schooler and a major leaguer, you're talking a difference between like 3 or 4 ounces. So obviously an ounce is a pretty big difference. But as far as measuring things, like, can you just quantify to people at all? Because I think that's the next thing I was going to talk about is the half inch, going up by half inches. That's a really big deal to me. But I'd like you to maybe sort of quantify and convince people that this really is a big deal. Can you do that at all? Do you just, from measuring kids, or maybe a kid like in one sitting when you're testing him, goes from like a 30 to a 31 inch or whatever with a whole ounce difference? Can you just kind of quantify that at all?
No, I can't. So just to give you an insight, so since we started, we have about 10,000 now data points we can kind of look back on and all the fits and data we've collected since we started the company. So we do have a lot of data, and ultimately, when you're trying to fit a bat, and I tell people this, like when you try to boil it down, it's really, you're trying to find the perfect balance between exit velocity and swing speed. Those are the two ultimate key metrics when you boil down picking a bat. So if you think about it, the analogy I always used at Easton was finding the right bat. It's like nailing a nail into wood with a hammer. You can use a really heavy hammer and kind of slowly guide it and just let the weight sort of do the work for you. So it's a lot harder to swing it fast, but all that weight will make that nail going super fast. Or you can get a really light hammer and swing it super fast and get the nail in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So ultimately, what you're trying to do is you're trying to find the heaviest hammer you can find that doesn't slow down your bat speed. So essentially, you're trying to find the heaviest bat your player can handle before your bat speed starts to suffer. So if you're swinging, let's say a 30 drop 10, and I give you a bat that's an ounce heavier, your exit velocity might actually go up because there's more mass hitting the bat, especially up a tee. Like a tee fit is almost not fair because you don't have to control the bat or anything. But if I start giving you a heavier bat, you might hit it harder, but your swing speed's going to slow down. At the youth level, you can get away with that a little bit because pitching isn't as intense. But when you start getting to high school baseball, where players, you're going up against some heat, 97, 90-mile-an-hour fastballs, that extra ounce might be the difference of getting to that fastball or not for a player. So going up that half inch or going down a half inch, the ability to dial it in specifically to your swing so you can maximize your bat speed, that's the ultimate key of buying a bat. And to your earlier point of the best bat, I did a fit with a kid. He came in with a Walmart, nope, I'm not going to name the brand, but they came in with a Walmart bat, basically. Call it a $50 retail bat. And he did the fit, and that Walmart bat was about 3 ounces heavier than it said it was, but that was the perfect bat for that kid. There was no bat of my $208 bats that I offer that was giving him better performance. And we told him, hey, hold on to that bat because that bat is perfect for you. It is optimized for you. That's true temper baseball right there. Transparency and get the right bat in your hand.
That's awesome. I love that process. And I'd like for you to tell people, again, without trying to make this a promo for your bats, the 120-day fit guarantee. Can we go back to that? Can you just touch on that again for people and tell people exactly? So, like, if I get a bat for my kid, and 120 days is a long time, if at any point during the 120 days I think he needs to either go up or down a size, what happens?
So you purchase a bat, you have a receipt either in your email from our website or you kept your receipt from wherever you bought it. All you do is you go to our website and you go to the warranty page, and there'll be a spot where it says 120 fit guarantee. You literally tell us, hey, here's my receipt, here's the bat I bought, and here's the bat I need. We get a request from you. Someone from customer service immediately follows up, confirms that the bat you want is in stock, and sends you a shipping label for the current bat, so you send that one back, and a shipping confirmation that your new bat has gone out. And we never want a player to be without a bat, so you can keep your bat until the new one arrives, and then you can use that same box to ship your old bat back to us. And you can do that, as long – the reason we picked 120 days, that's about 4 months. That's about the length of a regular season. So we want to make sure you're swinging the bat, whether you get stronger or you ended up picking a bat that was too heavy to start for some reason. We never want you to just walk away from a bat because it's no longer suited for you. That's the 120 day.
And I want to talk more also just about the quality of these bats. And let me ask you first, before I even ask you about that, what am I looking at, like, price-wise? And I'm thinking of high school and college type bats, just because that's where my mind is. That's where this podcast is a lot. So, like, what am I looking at to buy a true temper bat right now?
So our USSSA and USA bats are both hybrid bats. So they have an aluminum barrel composite handle, and they all retail for $280. So when you think of the high-end two-piece composites are at $350. We also wanted to have a bat that was a little more consumer-friendly from a price point of view. But by having the hybrid model, an aluminum barrel is hot out of the wrapper. You don't have to break it in. We wanted to make a bat that you can get fit today and go play with that bat that same day. No worrying about breaking it in or anything like that. We want our bats to be ready to go. And you play in cold weather. Composite has its downsides in cold weather. That's not to say we're never going to make a composite bat, because we probably will. But to start, we wanted a bat that was ready to go with an aluminum barrel hot out of the wrapper.
Now, if I'm being totally honest with you, when typically, like, if I hadn't spoken to you personally and I saw your bats online and I saw, okay, especially if I wasn't familiar with the golf side of things, but even if I was, I would think, okay, a new bat company, and I'd probably be really skeptical of the quality of the bat. There was one time as a college coach, I can specifically remember that there was a company that, we had talked to them. We had some guys buying gloves from them and stuff. We kind of had a little bit of a glove deal. It was at a junior college, so we had guys that were getting gloves from them. And they had a bat. They said, "Hey, we'll send you a bat, and you can try it out with your players." All right, what's the big deal? And the price was probably similar to what your price is. So we're kind of skeptical to begin with, but they sent it, and within. Had one of our best players who ended up playing, actually still playing pro ball to this day. But he was the first guy to hit with it, and on like his third swing, the bat cracked. You know, and it's like, all right, that's kind of what I expected from this new company, like probably not going to be able to compete. And that would be my first thought with you as well, if I'm a coach, is just like being very skeptical of how good of a quality this is. And even if you're willing to replace it, like that happens with the companies too. I'm pretty sure this other company that we tried out back in the day, like the bat cracked and they said, hey, we'll send you another one. It's like, well, I don't really want another one because it's probably just going to crack again. But with you guys, with True Temper Baseball, does the golf side of things that's been around for 100 years, does that science, does that tech, is that you know, the material you're using to create these golf shafts, does that go into the baseball side of things? Like, is that a way for, I guess, someone that's listening to this to kind of feel confident that this isn't like a startup company, like this is something like the actual the material being used for the bat, the science going into it, like this has all been around for a long time despite baseball being new?
No, 100%. And I think that's the beauty of being part of True Temper Golf and True Temper Sports. We're not just this startup that, you know, decided to get into baseball all of a sudden. We have 100 years of R&D behind us. We have a world-class facility in San Diego and overseas where we have engineers literally working on these technologies. Actually, two of the bat's biggest technology pieces are our fused hybrid and our smart ply technology actually come from our hockey stick division and our golf division. We used to make, funny enough, we used to make Beezer bats for Reebok back in the day. So it's not even our first attempt at bats. Having said all that, you know, bats break all the time. I mean, the DeMarini Goods, probably the hottest BB Core bat right now, probably has the biggest fail rate of any bat out there. But customers are willing to put aside warranty issues for performance. So I can't sit here and tell you that nothing will ever happen to our bats, but what I can tell you is our bats go through a very rigorous R&D procedure. Our bats are made at the factories where some of the biggest name bats are also made. So we're using the same high-quality material as them. And then add on our patents and trade secrets and know-how on aluminum and composites. That's where people can rest assured that they're getting the same quality, if not better, than everything else on the market.
I want to talk next, Enrique, about your advisor panel. Is that what you call it, your advisor panel? Because you've got some pretty, you know, knowledgeable people behind this as well, like actual baseball guys. Like, can you talk a little bit about the advisors you have? Is it called an advisor panel?
Yes. So that's actually one of probably the coolest parts of True Diamond Science. True Temper Baseball. Keep going back. So the advisor panel, listen, when we started, we knew we didn't want to get into the lesson or coaching side of the game. Our brand mission is to give the player the best bat for their swing. Now, a player getting better and improvement in drills, all that needs to come from people that live and breathe training and facilities and all that. So the advisor panel is essentially a group of people that we put together. We got Eric Burns on there, Edgar Renteria. Actually, him and I are both Colombian from the same hometown. That's how we know each other. And we can bring we even have retail store owners on there. So we get a kind of a side of the store side, some facility owners, some hitting gurus, some ex-pro players. And we use them as a sounding board of, hey, what are players looking for? What did you like? We use a lot of their resources for R&D. So a lot of their connections, we'll send prototype bats and make sure players are hitting the stuff before we make it and tell the world that they're good. All of our products are validated, tested through these channels. And then when somebody asks us about, hey, how do I get better? We defer to their coach. Like, nothing's ever going to, doesn't matter. I give you the best bat in the world. Nothing's going to replace great coaching, hard work, great attitude, good teammates, and a little bit of luck, right? That's baseball. But what getting you in the right bat will do is give you a higher probability of success when you are up at the plate. We talk about it all the time. To be an elite player in this sport, you fail 6 out of 10 times. That's an insane. When you flip the stats, you know, a 300 batting average is really failing 7 out of 10 times. So it's just crazy to think about that. You know, if so much is riding at that moment at the plate, why not make sure you have the best tool to make sure you have the highest chance of success while you're doing that?
I think it's all just so important for the game, and with how quickly the game is developing. Like, what other area of baseball is the answer to any question? Like, hey man, just whatever feels best, like whatever feels right. Like, it's all, everything now is measured. or everything can be measured. And obviously at every level, like you don't have Rapsodo or TrackMan at a little league game, but like if you want to develop, if you're with a, not your coaching your team, but like an off-season coach, someone who is like a personal instructor, that guy's probably going to be measuring things and like, let's see if this works for you. And how are we going to know? It's not just the eye test anymore. Like if you're hitting the ball harder, if you're barreling the ball more often, if you're talking about hitters specifically, if your exit velocities, your average exit velocity is going up, if this and that is happening, then what we're doing is working. And if it's not, then it's not. And it's hard. Like, what other area of baseball are people just totally relying on feel or like the wiggle test, like you said? And it's just, this is the first real good answer that I've gotten, again, which is why I wanted to have you on the podcast. And of course, we want to talk about your product, what makes it different. But one of the most significant things I think we've talked about today is just that there is a process now of how to choose the right bat. And that doesn't mean you need to pick a True Temper bat. That just means that True Temper's got the process. Like, you guys have the process down of how I can figure out between, maybe I bring 3 bats with me to a fitting, bats A, B, and C, and now I'm going to put there's going to be numbers and some some objective data behind which of these bats is the best for me personally. And that's going to be different than the guy next to me. I think that process is awesome.
No, I mean, and you think about it, every player's different, right? Like, think of the MLB. You have Aaron Judge and Altuve, 2 elite players that require 2 very different bats, right? Like, it's just, you have to make sure you're swinging what's best for you. And data's great, and we believe in data, but at the end of the day, I remember doing a fit, and there was this player that he was hitting his bat. It was a competitor bat, and then we fit him into a true bat, and we gave him better exit velocity, better bat speed, better smash factor. He was hitting it for like every single thing on the screen was better, but he just didn't look comfortable swinging the true bat. He just didn't, like, his swing was much smoother with his old bat. And I remember telling him, he's like, hey Johnny, you're hitting our bat great, but you look kind of off with it. He's like, yeah, it just doesn't feel right. And I remember telling him, hey, hold on to your bat, because the last thing you want to do is think about your bat, and then when you're batting, the last thing you want to do is thinking about your bat. So you might be like, there's some give and takes, right? Like, the best bat for you might not be the one that hits it the furthest, because you might not be comfortable with it, and it might just feel heavy in your hands. You don't want to have to think about this stuff. So data's great to lay it out, but ultimately the player needs to be comfortable with it. There's all these factors, right? Like, data's great to a point. At the end of the day, you still got to go out there and swing it. So the player's got to be comfortable with it, and we'll be the first ones to tell you, hey, like, even though you're mashing with this bat, like, you're going to psych yourself out thinking it's the bat's fault next time you're at bat against a real pitcher. So it all goes both ways, and I train all of our fitters and salesmen. It's all about getting people in the right bat, whether it's our brand or not our brand. Let's grow the sport, let's help the game, let's make baseball fun. That is what True Temper is all about.
And what you just said about, like, you might hit the ball farther with that bat, but it's not the right bat for you. There might be people listening to that think you're nuts. Like, whichever bat you hit the furthest with is the bat for you. But I like to always think of things in like extremes, just to really give you the best perspective possible. Like, if I went up to the plate and I swung with a 40-ounce bat, if I squared up a fastball with a 40-ounce bat, that ball is going to go a long way. But there's no way in the world that I'm going to have long-term success swinging a 40-ounce bat. I might hit a $125. When I hit it, it's going to go a long way, but I'm not going to hit it very often. So that's like how I like to think of things in extremes. And certainly there is the bat that helps me hit it the furthest. If I sort of work backwards from that and coming down in ounces, certainly there's going to be a crossroads where my bat speed's good enough to be able to make contact as often as I want to, good hard contact, and the ball's going to go as far as it should. Because on the flip side of things, if I swung a 20-ounce bat, I mean, I'll be able to square the ball up pretty often, more often with that bat than a 30-ounce, but ball's not going to go as far. So again, there's a place for those two things to meet as far as bat control and having the right the right weight behind the bat so the ball actually goes somewhere. And I think that this process is so unique and revolutionary in this game. It's the first time I've heard about it anyway. I've never heard anybody else talk about this, and I'm really intrigued by it. Can you tell us where and how someone can go for a physical fitting, or is there a place I can go online to see, like, are you guys at events? Are you at specific locations where people have to come to you? Like, how does someone actually get fitted for a bat?
So we're currently in specific locations. We have Monkey Sports is one of the retailers we partner with. They have 3 stores, Dallas, Irvine, and Derry, New Hampshire, where they have the full fit. San Diego, we actually have the full fit experience in San Diego. We have one in Jacksonville. We have one in Atlanta. So the best way to do is go to our website, and you can search the dealer locator, and in there it will let you kind of find places that perform the true fit, the full experience. We have also demo houses where they might not have the full fit, but you're able to go and get a hold of all of our sizes and drops, and you can swing the bats yourself. Some of them may have pocket radars or something laying around to get data, but there's demo. But ultimately, like, if anything, like, please stop buying bats off of like word of mouth or because it looks cool or because someone else did well with it. Swing a bat before you buy it with real balls and a real. Even if you have to borrow Johnny's, bat from the dugout and hit it at practice, do that before you go buy a bat on some review or something. So that's, if there's anything to take away from this podcast, is hit the bats with real baseballs in a real environment for you, and that way you'll know that bat is good for you.
This is awesome. This is Enrique Celedon, everybody. He's the Senior Director of Global Sales for True Temper Baseball. If you haven't checked it out and you're at this point of the podcast, you need to jump on their website. I'm not trying to sell you a bat, but I am trying to sell you on the experience. I think that, what could be better for your kid. Figured Out Baseball is about helping kids, helping coaches, helping parents, giving them good information. There's a lot of really good information in this podcast, and if you're not sold that you need to go to one of these things when you have a chance and get fitted for a bat, and again, either you're going to prove to yourself that the bat you're swinging is the best thing for you, or you're going to prove to yourself there's a better bat out there, and that's a win-win to me. If you haven't checked them out yet, I think that you really need to make sure that you or your kid or your players are doing the right thing and are swinging the right bats you can have the most success with. Because like you said, it's even the difference between a 280 hitter and a 320 hitter, like that's a couple hits a season. And if your bat is a little bit better than what you're swinging right now, if you can swing something a little bit better and help those stats all around, I think it's a no-brainer. So Enrique, I sincerely appreciate you joining us on this podcast. Is there anything that you want to leave us with, anything we forgot to talk about, anything that you definitely want to say before we wrap this up?
No, thanks for having me. I'm trying to think. So one of the biggest questions I'm trying to think here, like, what's the number one thing I get asked? And it's, does your bat have pop, or is your bat hot? And it's funny because what makes baseball super unique, it's actually a very regulated, piece of equipment. So BB core 0.500, USSSA 1.15 BPF. Like, there's literally lines where performance is governed. The bats cannot be hotter than the line. If they are, they're cheater bats, and they'll be banned, and you'll have to deal with that mess. So when you think about bats being regulated, nobody can be above the line. So everybody's at the line. Our UTR bats are 1.14. Our BB core bats are 0.499. Everyone else's bats are right on that line. The only way to give you a performance advantage in a regulated environment is by feel, so the bat feels better, and by fit, by dialing in your fit to your player. Well, you see it in golf all the time. Tiger and Rory, for example, swing 2 different drivers. That doesn't mean one driver is better than the other or goes further than the other. It's just those drivers are optimized to those players. So people like to say, like, the bat's hot, this bat's got pop. They're all at the line. It's just make sure you hit it before you try it, because we're all right at the line. Nobody wants to talk about that in baseball. Like, we literally have rules we have to stick by, and there's no way around those rules today. If somebody does, they'll be the hottest bat and sell millions of units. But that's the reality, that we're all governed. So why not get a bat that feels better and is optimized to you?
This is really good stuff. I've enjoyed this a lot, and I continue to learn from you. And honestly, if I'm going to tell people about you all and your process, just because I think it's the best thing for them, not because I'm trying to necessarily sell some True Temper bats, but just because I think that this process is fair to people. Enrique, this has been great, man. I appreciate you spending the time with us today.
Awesome, man. Let's do it again. This was awesome.